Hey everyone, welcome back to Canon of Design Quick Tips. This is Tavis Leaf Glover, and I've been missing in action for a little bit. Just finished up a drawing course that you guys should definitely check out, especially if you're wanting to learn how to design or compose a drawing and lead yourself up to a painting or even editing photos, which we'll see in this analysis of Steve McCurry. So Steve McCurry got in a lot of trouble a while back for editing his photos heavily, photoshopping things out and stuff like that, which is fine because now he considers himself as a visual storyteller.
And there was a picture which was worked on in my studio, which I didn't see, and I wasn't there to approve it. And it was, it's a problem. So when I go back, I'm going to start to go through all these pictures and try and correct any mistakes or any, problems.
So are you against photoshopping on your work? Is that something that you don't?
Well, yeah, I think that, you shouldn't add or subtract things. I think that Photoshop is a tool to color correct and to do various sharpening and whatnot. It is obviously, everybody does that. So that's a tool which everybody uses. But I think your point about, color balance is everybody does that. I think as far as adding or subtracting things, that's not something that needs to be done or should be done.
So we're going to go through several of his photos and check out the composition and certain techniques that he uses to create the style of photo that he always consistently creates. So he's more of a composed type of photographer rather than a snapshot aesthetic type of photographer like Gary Winograd.
They're just dumb.
He's got well-composed images and they're highly refined and edited, colorized, which we'll see as we go through these. But this one's a really famous one. We can tell he's got the complementary colors, the green and the red. The green is lighter than the red in certain places, so it helps that contrast and creates the nice color harmony. And you can check out the video that I have on complementary colors. But one thing you might notice as we go to this next image is that I don't know if this is the image that he's put out or if this is the original and someone on the internet just edited this one, but I found this one and you can tell it's highly colorized, saturated, and edited. So he's saturated the entire image. You can see this gradient going from blue to green. So the background's edited, the image is cropped. You can see this negative space on the right side is gone. Okay, and then probably edited out some of the tears in her outfit. It's like in this original, you can see some of these tears. So it looks like they've been edited out. Anyway, this is all fine and dandy. Whatever you want to do with your photos, go ahead and do it. But when you're documenting street photography and trying to capture things exactly as they are and present them to the world, then it's best to just probably, capture them as is and present it that way. But that's just my opinion on it. Okay, so we can tell his style is he's highly refining it. He's colorizing his photos. He's cropping things. He's editing things out. He's using a shallow depth of field. These are all part of his artistic style. So to show you how easy it is to colorize, I'm going to do it real quick on this one. So I'm creating a new layer and I'm sampling her skin color. And you can tell it's already been adjusted, the blues and the oranges of her face. It's almost like it's a black and white image that's been colorized. That's what it looks like to me. But for people that haven't really viewed a lot of black and white photos that have been colorized, it might just look like a normal photo to you. But you can color this, and then that was real sloppy, but I'm just going to show you real quick. Put it on color, maybe reduce the opacity to 50, and you can see how the blue became orange like that. Super simple. Another way you can do it is to create a hue and saturation layer. So you want to change the blue color to more turquoise, and now we can select the original image, select color range, and then select the color of her head wrap here, and you can push the plus sign, add even more color, maybe some darker blues, and adjust the fuzziness. Okay, and that selects that. Then select your hue and saturation layer. I filled that with black. I'm going to deselect and then inverse that selection. So now all of her blues have become like a turquoise. So that's showing you how easy it is to colorize these photos. So that's what I believe is what's going on here. It's not the original color of the scene. It looks like he's desaturating and then he's adding color back to it. That's what it looks like to me, but perfectly fine. Whatever he wants to do, that's fine. But I'm just showing you really quick how to do it or how it can be done. Not really a tutorial on Photoshop. So he's using the shallow depth of field again. You might be using f2.8. I use that a lot, and this is kind of what it looks like when you use that aperture. And we'll see how it looks differently. Zoom in on the eyes, and then you can see it's still sharp around the arms. So he's using a higher aperture, but the background's still blurry, which leads me to believe that the background could have been slightly manipulated to be more blurry than what it was in real life, which is fine. He's just eliminating distractions. Okay, and if you wanted to take a step further, he could have probably, like if you come up here, you can soften that dark area up here. So this is just the stamp tool, and I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer, and you can see it's taking out a little bit of that darkness. Whenever you have high contrast near the edge, it creates a distraction. That's not really too bad, but I'm just showing you what you can do. And you can tell he's manipulated the colors of this one. If you look at a real rooster, you're probably going to see more color variations than this solid red color here. So let's keep going. This one also, I think perhaps he could have manipulated the blurriness of the background. Eyes are in focus, shoulders in focus. This is in focus, and then it falls off pretty deeply back here because that's going backwards, but it just looked like perhaps he adjusted that blurriness just a little bit. This area up here, not sure what's going on, but this is definitely edge flicker, and you can soften that like we did the other one. If you're editing your photos like him, you can just fill it in with some of that color that's around it, blend it in as well as you can, and this is super quick, and then reduce the opacity of that layer so it just blends it in a little better. And right over here is definitely high contrast. Probably could have used a subtle vignette. Vignettes are tricky because you don't want to overdo it. Like over here it looks like he's got a vignette, but then over here it looks like he forgot to add a vignette. So we can just add a quick vignette just to soften that contrast, subdue it, and maybe 10% on that layer. Okay, just reduces some of that contrast just a little. All right, so that's that one. You can definitely tell he manipulated the colors in this, which is fine. Increased the saturation of the face, probably manipulated these blues. Okay, let's keep going. Same here, added a bit more saturation, complementary colors in that. He's also got that man on a sinister diagonal. So the sinister diagonal runs from upper left to lower right. Okay, that's the sinister diagonal. He's also got a unique perspective. He's shooting downward onto this crowd. And there's almost an arabesque in his arms here, which is nice. Okay, so that's a really nice one, simple but nice. This one, you can tell this is where drawing skills come into play. If you know how to adjust values and control values in drawing, you can do it like he did here to help with the figure-ground relationship. So figure-ground relationship is definitely one of the most important techniques you can learn. And if we look at the weeds here, I'm going to switch this back to red. We look at the background grass, this tall grass, super light here, super dark here. So we can tell something's been manipulated here to improve the background and the figure-ground relationship. So when you want to test your figure-ground relationship, you just run an imaginary line around the subject and you find out where the areas are lacking contrast so you can adjust them. And if you're adjusting a photo or a drawing, you can just adjust the contrast to make the certain part of the object stand out. So we're going to run around here, and where we lose contrast, I'm just going to skip over it. So we lose contrast here because the dark hair meets the dark of the grass. Okay, and we can tell perhaps they've lightened this area to make the neck of the donkey stand out. This definitely looks lightened, this area here. You can tell because this drastic change from light to dark. And you just keep going around, and it looks like they lightened the grass right here. And right here we lose a little bit of contrast, the dark blue of the shirt against the dark background. And then here you can definitely tell they manipulated and lightened the face of this baby. Super light in comparison to what's going on in the scene. Just stands out a little bit too much. Same with up here, coming around, and then we see the hat loses contrast in the light sky, so we can skip over that. His back loses contrast with the grass, and then you can tell they lightened up this kid's face right here because his back's in shadow, and then her head's blocking light here, so this kid's whole face is in shadow, but they lighten it up for us to see that. They probably would have edited his whole head out, but then they would have had this leg sticking out here. So figure ground relationship, we're still going around, just checking the contrast, making sure it looks good, and then any areas that don't look good, you can see right here is dark against dark. And you're allowed to have a few areas that don't have significant contrast. That's called lost edges, and perfectly fine. They have that in master paintings. Helps with the depth. Right here's a lost edge. Enough contrast here. You can see the donkey's leg come down here. Okay, so the figure ground relationship is really good because they went through and dodge and burned a lot of areas to help with this. And you can do that with a brightness and contrast layer, however you want to do it, dodge and burn, doesn't matter. You can do things in Photoshop 100 different ways. This one stood out to me like a really cool photo a long time ago, but now that I look at it again, I'm seeing it as probably at least 4 images, and I will show you just from like how we know he edits photos and manipulates photos and how Annie Leibovitz stitches photos together. So right here, the ratio of the image, it's got a little bit more at the top here. You can see this building has a little bit more negative space at the top, and then this image, it's missing. And this is cropped to the 1.5 grid. So what stands out to me is the lighting of this guy. You can tell it's manipulated because if we follow the same value of this wall here, this area, and we follow it down the wall, it gets really light behind this guy, and that's because they're helping the figure ground relationship, so he pops out off of the background, which is fine. But if you're familiar with drawing techniques and you know how to control value, you can spot these things, maybe not make them too obvious, make them blend in a little bit better. But it's a pretty good job, but I'm just pointing this out so you guys can kind of know what to look for, maybe know how to edit your own photos. Another thing, so I think this is one photo, this guy, because I'm looking at the way there should be more shadow in this area. I'm not seeing a lot of shadow here. He's super light. These guys are more dark, okay? Sure, light could be hitting him only in this spot, but it just looks, it stands out as a different image than these. Okay, so one image, 2 images, and then this, I could have swore I saw an image without this foreground person in it, but I think this is another image right here, and then this is another image. So I think it's maybe 4, maybe 5. Perhaps this is even an image up here. Could be 4 or 5 images stitched together. So on one hand, it's cool. It's portraying his visual storytelling type of concept. On another hand, it's kind of leading other photographers like they have to make a perfect composition like this and get it right in camera, which is really tough to do. So just some encouragement for you guys. You don't have to get it perfect like this, because I believe this is just photo manipulation, which is fine. It's just something to look out for. And this one is a great photo. I love this photo, and you can see the contact sheets if you have the Magnum book. But I love this shot, and you can tell it's got the aerial perspective in the background. These women are grouped together because they look similar. Okay, they all have the same kind of red outfits on. That's the law of similarity. That's a Gestalt psychology principle. And we've got nice balance. If we divide this in half, we can see the contrast of these balancing out with the contrast of this tree, which is nice. And we've almost got kind of like almost like an arabesque running up around here, be coming down here. Okay, we've got a little bit of movement in there, which is nice. And then the figure ground relationship looks like they could have reduced the contrast in these areas, so it doesn't look like a tree's growing out of their head, and it looks like just fogginess. So the figure-ground relationship is nice. So pretty cool shot. I like that one. But anyway, this is to maybe help you guys see how you can adjust your photos, maybe how you can tell if some photos are manipulated or not, and to encourage you to, you know, not think you got to get perfect shots all the time like this, perfectly composed things. Study Gary Winogrand. He's got that snapshot aesthetic, and maybe mix the two together and you'll get something that's more candid, but also some that are beautifully composed too. But anyway, I hope you guys like that. Thanks for all the support and for sticking with me as I make certain projects for everyone. And I hope to get more videos out to you in the near future. But comment below, let me know who else you'd like to see. And I'm hoping to do a kind of like a viewer's choice video where I take care of a bunch of recommendations and suggestions of certain artists and movies and all that stuff, so I can point out the composition techniques in those. So, all right guys, I will talk to you later.